welcoming in our first guest. So Joanne Dreyfus from Deloitte, leader of transportation, hospitality, and services. I don't know if I love the fact that you're kind of beaming at us from a distant star in space. Bringing forth the good news of hospitality from the future.
Exactly. I didn't want to get my Christmas slide out quite so early, although that's, not in line with what we see around the world. But, Christmas for me doesn't quite kick off yet because I've actually bought no presents. So it's got to kick off in about at least, another 5-6 days. So I didn't want to put Christmas, but I wanted to be, as a warming to 2024, which is just around the corner.
Yeah, it's a bit of a kind of strange time, like the time just before Christmas, basically in the new year, because it feels like you're still stuck in like very firmly in 23, trying to wrap up all the different things that you have to do, but very much in kind of, I think most people in businesses have kind of gone through the grueling process of trying to predict how their businesses will actually kind of grow in 23. I mean 24, sorry. So with that, I'll kind of ask you the same questions that we posed for ourselves, but what predictions did you make for 23 that came true?
So I'd say this is an easy one because I didn't publicize any of my predictions, so I can actually say I was right on everything. But I'll try to be a little bit more honest. What did I think? I thought that travel would be back. For me, people love travel. People want the experiences. When you look at, where consumer spending is globally, people want those experiences, and travel completely answers that. Business needs that travel as well. So did I predict that travel would be back? Yes. Did I predict, though, that RevPAR would be so ramped by ADR? Again, I could say yes, and I did predict it would be 27% in Europe, etc., but that would be a complete lie. So no, I didn't think ADR was going to go rocket high as it has. But yeah, I think the last numbers I saw were nearly 30% ADR increase in Europe, 20% roughly in the US.
Yeah.
That's nuts. We know we've all got inflation in there. We've got pent up demand, but it's affecting economy. It's affecting luxury. It's affecting everywhere. So that for me, I didn't quite expect such an increase.
What do you think it's mainly kind of driven by? Is it that hotels have become better at revenue management, better tools basically from that perspective, or do you think that it's actually kind of the loose pockets of consumers, that there was just so much, because I think we touched upon the fact that occupancy didn't really kind of rise all that much, but it did seem basically that the ADR just went through the roof, and so that's always a bit of a strange one to actually kind of get your head around.
Yeah, exactly. When I look at the occupancy numbers, I think Europe, US, it's like probably -4, -5 compared to 2019 if we go back to those good old days. China slightly less, but we all know the reasons there. So why did ADR go up? I think it's very much linked with the lead time. Well, pent up demand. I personally just wanted to get out of my house at whatever cost it was, and so there could have been a few others like me. I think it's lead time as well. Lead times back in 2018, 2019 were horribly short. And so very difficult for the hotel industry to organize itself in relation to pricing, but also in relation to cost base. Clearly we're seeing from a leisure side, lead time has increased. I think with that, wish, and I think it was Adam saying that, wish and desire to travel more. And so thinking ahead of something bright and sunny, you book up your next trip. And also for business, I think personally, every time I'm now doing a business trip, I'm trying to combine 3 or 4 different meetings, which is like mission impossible. But I will never go to Singapore without trying to see anyone that I need to see in the AP region. So those types of trips have to be booked up a lot earlier because you've got to get everyone in and everyone available. So good news from a hotel front because they can then manage the pricing, but also manage the cost base. and potentially, you know, the number of nights I'm staying with them 4 or 5 nights rather than, you know, 2, 3.
Yeah, that's a super interesting one. Do you think that's part of a longer trend, or do you think that was kind of like 23 was an aberration?
I think longer trend, because I think you link that with sustainability. I think a lot of people and a lot of businesses are now ensuring that, you know, you don't do those 2 trips to US in the same
Right.
month. It's, you know, you go once a quarter, or once a quarter to AP or whatever, but you do it for a reason, and staying longer. So then you add then that whole mix with leisure, because if you do
Right.
it that way, you're often staying maybe even 10 days, and staying over a weekend, which then makes your choice of hotel quite different.
Mm,
And if you're thinking you're staying longer and with a weekend stay as well.
nice. Yeah, I think that's really, really interesting for me as well, because I feel that you know, that those types of trends basically, and those types of uh like kind of leisure trends, I think that most hotels are not completely actually kind of set up for them, when you actually look at you know, the way that they want to actually kind of serve their guests. Do you think that that will also kind of, you know, uh you know, bear itself out in terms of the types of brands basically that will start seeing kind of emerging from this, or for example that that people will carry out different types of works, and different types of you know, changes basically that they will actually kind of make to their hotels?
I think probably both. I think, you know, there could be some, you know, changing to brand standards in order to try to reply to leisure, but, you know,
Hmm.
will it be every type of hotel? No. According to the length of travel, and according if you're, you know, taking more international or national travel, etc. So I think on that national travel, it won't change so dramatically. But yeah, and then in relation to the brands that might find a stronger positioning on this, I think definitely as well, because I was listening to your discussion earlier about, you know, returning to the office, etc., and, you know, quite significant changes there. I think there has been a general change in attitude of that strong line in the past between work and leisure, and now it being a lot more blurred, even in the
Mm,
choice of dress, in the choice of you know, hotel location, in the choice of how you structure your day. Where in the past, you know, if it was a work day, it would purely be a work day.
yeah,
Where, you know, I clearly see now that there's, you know, more flexibility in that, and definitely in dress as well. But
yeah.
that's another
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
This isn't a
Well,
retail
whether you
discussion.
kind of think that are you on the scale of that's a good thing, or are you more on the kind of, you like the formal wear of all business?
I think it's a real mix, depending on your business and depending on your relationship with the clients, depending on your learning organization and structure. Like at Deloitte, for example, we're very much an organization where our people learn on the ground,
Hmm.
and therefore, if they are at home alone, that learning on the ground, being
Yeah,
inspired by others around, you know, watching how other people interact with, you know, certain client situations, etc., you're just in a different ball game.
yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, I think there's a lot of things that, how to say, the slightly older ones of us know about from the past, but when you think of the younger ones coming into the marketplace since 2020, they've never really seen it. So how do you
Yeah,
teach them?
yeah. Like I think that the idea of kind of company as a community is definitely kind of under strain when it comes to these things. So let's maybe move on to the
Yep.
what you didn't or what you did expect that didn't really happen.
Biggest one here for me is distressed asset transactions. So I was thinking, hoping with all our transaction guide that we'd have a rocket year, and there'd be just, you know, transactions all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, as back in, was it 2007, 2008 or whatever. It hasn't happened. Okay, maybe linked with COVID government grants, maybe linked with
Mm,
that good ADR, that's kept some people a bit more buoyant than they potentially, deserve according to their product. But
Mm.
Why I want as well this distract activity is not just for our Deloitte transaction department, of course, but also to get hotels out there that need some love and care, and get them in some hands of some new owners who've got the cash in order to renovate, because there are some assets who do, that does need that love and care. So let's see for 2024 on that one. But for me, mixed messages, I think, already in relation to 24 on that. So I'm not quite sure where that's going to go.
Yeah, like I think, you kind of, people talk about the zombie economy and about those things. And I think that, like corporate or kind of, capitalistic rebirth, basically, that you do see with the economy in terms of the boom and the busts, basically. It does feel like in the last decade or so, we've lost a bit of that, basically. And that I think that especially in real estate, that is a bit of a shame, basically, because I don't think customers and consumers basically kind of want to have that same experience, and I think that they would probably prefer that their kind of dollars actually spoke a little bit more, basically, in terms of the effect that it has. That's super interesting. So what developments are you most excited about? What do you see in your crystal ball?
Depends. It's a difference between what I see and what I hope. So let me put more what I hope. I really hope that sustainability will take a bigger space in 2024 and going forward. Really see mixed reactions up to date. For me, I see a lot of hotel groups pushing harder on this one. Accor made some announcements recently. You've got quite a lot of strong push from certain investors, certain government regulation, etc. We know what's going on in that space, but I see there's less push from the customer. And I do think, wish and hope that the customers in 2024 push more on this, push for more information, make choices in relation to sustainability. I think a lot of people do an awful lot of great things in this space. Could we do more? Definitely yes. But there's a lot of missing education and missing storytelling, and some hardcore action as well. It's not just storytelling.
And what do you think that that's mainly kind of driven by? Is it the lack of being able to, I think that people have talked about, the idea of having your emission standards basically, next to the room categories that you're actually kind of booking, and knowing your carbon footprint, and that would probably drive a lot of customer decisions, and kind of, I think, being frustrated at that front basically being so far away. Or do you think it is something about that somehow people have kind of have decided that somehow global warming is going to kind of take care of itself, and that there's institutions and different things that we're basically kind of doing, so in my personal life I don't need to actually kind of take heed all that much?
I don't quite know the why. To be honest, I would, what you've just said as 2 or 3 suggestions is they're all possible. I think it's potentially that mix of saying, well, as soon as I get on the aeroplane, I'm not necessarily doing a tick positive for the environment. So, okay, let me do it next week when I get back. And let's just, black out this week. Maybe it's that lack of information, potentially. The idea that it's more costly, potentially, as well. And I think it's that whole, I try to see a bit more 360. So yes, you've got the carbon impact, but you've also got, the society angle. What's, who's being employed in the hotel, and the jobs and the learning given to those people. What about all, the purchases of F&B and the use of that in the kitchen, etc., and how people are reducing waste. So for me, it's not just the carbon; it's the whole the whole shebang. And how a hotel could. I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to measure all of that and get all that information, and for customers to plow through all of that to make a decision. So yeah, I'd
Yeah,
say it would be,
interesting.
yeah, I just
And do you
wish
think that
we
it,
did move quicker.
yeah, do you think that it's also because we've kind of taken on ESG as a kind of category together, and that we might be better served by basically kind of having those three categories almost kind of split? Because I think that everyone sometimes basically kind of picks their bugbears basically kind of with those, rather than saying, all three are important.
I think with the travel industry, because the carbon impact of a flight, again, you can take a train, but if
Hmm.
you took the flight, you're already negative. So actually pulling them all together is actually a better way of
Right.
having a holistic vision of, okay, if I make that trip to Laos or whatever, I've got some negative bad points, but then I could also do some activities that would give me some some bounty points to try to even it out. So I think it is useful to consider all together,
Hmm.
because that is that impact, isn't it? If those hotels in Laos didn't have the staff, didn't have that
Right. Right.
community relationship, etc., you wouldn't be able to go and stay there. So I do think you need to see it all, but then it does make it quite complex to
Yeah.
explain. And you've got this in so many other industries. Everyone started buying electric bicycles, and then it was just
Yeah.
like, yeah, let's all cycle everywhere, but oh shit, now what do we do with the batteries? So
Yeah.
we're all sort of jumping onto what we think are good ideas, and then potentially realizing there's a negative issue around the corner.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the innovation that's happening there, but it always feels that like all of that innovation is kind of 20 years away. I think like when you look at Northvolt up in the Nordics, basically doing their kind of non-lithium based batteries and things like that, and you kind of wish like, well, when exactly is that going to hit the market?
Yeah, I think
But
you just got to put your trainers on and walk. I don't think anyone's proven that walking is wrong.
yeah, that's
So
true. Well, walking to Laos is pretty difficult.
exactly,
I've
that would
heard.
be a long trip. So that's probably what I was doing all of 24 and all of 25, actually, and I might be able to touch base with you again in 26.
Well, apparently it only takes 80 days. So let's go to 24 and what you're expecting basically from from that perspective to see, where we're going to. What types of things do you think that we'll see more of, or that will be kind of continuing trends from the last couple of
Yeah.
years?
So I think performance similar to 23 will probably hopefully continue. So I'm expecting still very strong demand in Europe.
Hmm.
Investment market there, if I think just more about Europe, I reckon we might have sort of two halves. Not so good for the north, better for the south. And it's been a while that we've been saying that investment's been strong, Portugal, Spain, etc. But I think that will continue. I think our sector has got a bit of a positive light from the sovereign wealth funds. So I'm
Hmm.
expecting more activity in that space, great source of equity coming through their long-term investment, etc.
Yep.
I might slightly contradict, but that's the joys of these discussions, what you guys were talking about earlier about service departments. I reckon might tip over the edge, less excitement, more excitement for just hardcore hotels.
Nice.
But we can debate that one out another day. I could be wrong.
What do you think do you
Um,
think that's luxury, or do you think that that's basically like that's all classes?
More all classes. I
Wow.
think hotels are pure hotel, pure basic bog standard hotels
Yep.
are back up there. Let's talk about service apartments. Let's talk about hostels. Let's focus hotels, but let's see this time next year. Resorts, I think resorts are back.
Yeah.
So 2024 again, a good push on some greatly differential resort offerings. And I agree with your last discussion though on AI, client personalization.
Mm.
For me, this sector now has got no more excuses for not knowing their clients. We've had that whole data wave, and the sector didn't really use it as well as it could have done. I no longer want to go into a hotel, even though I've been there 10 times, and feel like I'm walking in there for the first time.
Right.
So, and Last but not least, as I'm based in Paris, when we say 2024, we say Olympics. So that is also what I am greatly looking forward to, and seeing, the impact of the Olympics on the hospitality industry. Let's kick up the French and make them welcome people to Paris over the summer.
And how do you think Paris will handle it? Will it be kind of overrun, or do you think that it will be a great party as I think London was a couple of years ago?
Okay, I'm going to be bold, and so any French person on this call is probably then going to send me daggers very shortly. But I think we've got two parts of the French population. You've got the Parisians who'll embrace it, and the Parisians who'll hate it. I'm thinking and hoping the Parisians who'll hate it will just leave. Because they'll go to their summer house as they do every year, etc. So I'm hoping that they'll have left, and then we'll just have the ones who'll embrace it, who'll be left. And so it should be an amazing party. So again, apologies for all those Parisians I've just insulted, but some of them.
I think as a local
lovers
now, you can do that. No, like I feel the same way in New York. I feel that I can also opine on how New Yorkers are basically the entire time. Well,
we'll
thank
see
you
on my
so much.
metro
This has
trip
been
home this evening.
Yeah, exactly. Post update. But no, thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure and such a joy being able to connect with you. But thank you so much for dedicating the time to us, and hopefully I'll see you very, very soon at another Deloitte event. So thank you so much for putting those on.